Okay, so my name is Rubén Mancheno, and today we're going to talk about the assigned text, which is Viaje a la América Meridional por el río Amazonas, Estudios sobre la quina. This is a text that was written in the year 1993 by La Fuente and Estrella. So basically, a brief introduction and historical context about the text. In the year 1730, there was a scientific debate that extends in the academic European media about the characteristics of the Earth, of the planet Earth. So there are two types of beliefs in the academics at that time. The Newtonians thought that the Earth was circular, that had a circular form and was flattened at the poles. Meanwhile, the Cartesians thought that the Earth had a equatorial flatness. The Scientific Academy of Paris organized two expeditions in the year 1735 to the locations of Laponia and Quito. To this mission, there were several scientists involved. One of them was La Condamine, Godin, Bouguer, Jussieu, Jorge Juan, y Antonio Dujois. They arrived to Quito in the year 1736, and they stay in South America till the year 1743. They wanted to study several topics while they were staying there. One of them was geography, anthropology, and botany. It is important also to notice that one of the objectives of these expeditions was to determine the value of a degree of a meridian in the vicinity of the equator, and the main purpose or the order of this expedition was basically geodetic. So one of these scientists, Da Condamine, makes his contributions about the study of Rio Amazonas and the quina, which is known as the Peruvian bark, in two texts, which are considered the first scientific approach made by Europeans about the Amazonas. These two texts we are going to analyze and discuss about the argument of which one. What La Condamine did, he traveled through the Amazon River until reaching the Atlantic Ocean with the purpose of making recordings and develop a map. The first text which I'm going to analyze and that the text refers is the Mito y Geometría del Amazonas. So, as I say, the objective of La Condamine was to return to Europe following the Rio Amazonas and making a map by the observations and characteristics of the river that he can record. So this is considered the first scientific exploration in scientific terms, not missionary or colonial terms like the previous ones. The characteristics of the river that La Condamine could observe and record were the width, the depth, the flow, speed, the estuaries and tributaries, the magnetic variation of the compass, the tides, the dangers in the navigation, and the communication with other rivers. In the recordings, there are evidence of La Condamine shows evidence of exotic landscapes, contact with other cultures through the river, and the objective of this expedition was to give an idea of the river and its characteristics to the people in the Scientific Academy of Paris. And there's an interesting quote that we can find in the text that probably La Condamine says. This is obviously translated, but it goes like this: ¿Cómo recorrer el Amazonas sin quedar absorto ante sus pobladores, riesgos y paisajes? Going on with this mito and geometría del Amazonas, La Condamine tells us that there are three types of indigenous people which he found on his expedition. The first two types are like nations that have certain degree of civilization which is low and that have made savages now to men, while the third type of indigenous people is have little characteristics of men. Also, La Condamine tells us that mostly these people are insensitive, indifferent, and lazy. He often makes characterizations about indigenous people. It's like since he comes from other culture and mostly European and advanced in an advanced culture, he can't recognize this type of the rate in which people are evolving in this type of the world. So you could also say that La Condamine not only makes the description of these people, but it also like criticizes them and their way of living and their way of thinking and the way they are. Basically, there are these people called the Omawas, which are characterized of having an advanced civilization, knowledge in botany, and strange techniques to perform school deformations. These are all cultural traits about this tribe. The indígena, as the Condamine says and characterizes, is filthy, ignorant, it's aggressive, it can be influenced very easily by his friends. So La Condamine is not sensitive with this myth of the good savage that many people could have, that the good savage, because of his ignorance, is good and doesn't have any knowledge about anything. There is also another tribe which are called the Ayameos, which have another type of characteristics and skills, such as the construction of canoes. They have weapons resources, such as they have the ability to develop cerbatanas. However, as well as the other indigenous, La Condamine characterizes them as well as ignorant in their language, and he says that this language cannot be considered a method of communication because it was so complicated and so rare that other people in the world could not communicate in this matter. He says that there are a lot of mistakes in their communication and in their language because their words are too long and cannot be understood by a common being. The habitants of Pebas are the worst that are characterized by La Condamine because he says that they are basically animals. They are savages which are like habitants of the wilderness. They belong to the mountain. They have no human characteristics, and basically people or explorers from Europe will try to make them to convert them into men from their animal traits. In terms of the plants that can be studied in this region of the Amazonas, La Condamine founds obviously the quina, the rubber, floripondio, barbasco. These are to name a few examples because in the text there are a lot of plants that can be studied. In terms of animals that can be found in the river region, they are the tiger, the puma, the bear, the coati, the manatee, and some reptiles and birds which are mentioned along the chapter of the text. He also tells that the shores are pretty dangerous and that central navigation is recommended. Gigantic trees and the local hostile tribes and swells can be found and formed in the rivers and in their shores. A myth. Some myths are told by La Condamine in this text. Some of them are the myth or the legend of the Amazons, which are these warrior women that live in this region, and they are very strong and they fight. And but basically he says that the Amazons are not a myth, and he claimed that they could be found in the area of the Guayanas. Um, he also explains that there was evidence to seeing an Amazon with a little baby in her chest, but so this would mean that these Amazons will have will live with few men, so they can have children. There are legends about gold ruins and rivers that doesn't exist. He claims that there are basically myths that the locals have, and they could not be discovered by the explorers when they went through that region of the river. The second part of the text that we had to analyze was the leyenda y realidad de la quina. So basically, this part of the text describes the characteristics of this plant and how the explorers and the locals saw it, and it compares them. So in the year 1737, there were a lot of economic problems in the French company, which make La Condamine, which forced La Condamine to go to Lima. Um, in this trip, he could discover the Cascarillas de Loja, and that's why Jussieu was this botanist was part of the expedition. Thanks to this government, Jussieu later knew that this was important in the European circles of academics. So he, in his in his in his in his paper, he explains the way that Loja is geographically, like it, and also he explains the weather of this territory, the localization, and basically that these are the reasons why this tree of cascarillas could be found. He describes the plant in its characteristics, and he proclaims that Caxanuma is the location which the best specimens could be found. In the year 1742, Linneo gives the name of cinchona to the plant, and all of these recordings and information that these botanists make, La Condamine is able to promote this knowledge to the European botany academics. Basically the plant the plant served to treat the fever. It was this was a local and later a European way of using this plant. Jussieu claims that indigenous people refer to the plant as Yara Chup Chup, which meant the fever cooler them, which actually was a pretty good name because and a pretty good discovery, because he later discovered that the plant actually could cure the fever. Another name for the plant was Ayakara, which meant the sour crust. La Condamine and Jussieu taught the population of Loja to identify the quina crust so they can later treat their people. And according to Fernando de la Vega, this was the opposite, because he claimed that La Condamine and Jussieu didn't tell the population of Loja to identify the quinoa grass. They what they did was confuse them. The the quinoa was adulterated to form different powders later in the European matter. And years later, Miguel de Santisteban made some texts explaining not to use this type of remedies to cure paludismo or tercianas, which the locals do. However, they continued to use the quinoa without affecting their cultural beliefs.